So the question is that would criminalization of abortion amount to oppression against
Of
women?
women, yes.
Yeah, and I think, that's more of a play on words than anything, and I just want to refer to other situations, okay? So currently, right now, it's illegal for a man to abuse his wife.
Yes.
Physically, even mentally.
Mm-hmm.
A man can't kill his wife, of course, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we're oppressing men, because they can't carry out an act that's intrinsically wrong or intrinsically denies a right to another person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's what we argue, that abortion is denying the right to life of that unborn child.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not oppressing someone to say, you can't kill your unborn child. Okay? You don't oppress someone by preventing them from taking the right away from somebody else.
Mm. So in a nutshell, what I hear you saying is that it's not oppression when you prevent someone from killing somebody else.
Right.
Is that right?
That's
okay.
correct.
Thank you. So how many abortions do you estimate are performed in North America, like a rough estimate, every year?
Every year in North America,
Mm-hmm.
there's about 1.2 million in the U.S., and we're not 100% sure in Canada because statistics are getting harder and harder to come by, and then more and more secretive all the time. But there's probably at least 110,000 a year in Canada.
So why are there so many?
Why are there so many? Well, we could talk about that all day
I mean,
long.
I don't know.
If you could just nutshell it, so to speak.
Nutshell? Well, we've become a society that accepts abortion as a practice of birth control. We accepted birth control decades ago, and many people argue that the acceptance of birth control necessarily leads to the acceptance of abortion because birth control ultimately fails. In fact, there's some surveys out there that I've seen that over half the women going in for abortions were on some form of birth control that failed.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
That failed them. So we've just become a culture that has accepted the notion that the unborn child is just a clump of tissue, it's just a mass of cells.
How did that arise?
Well, through the use of language. For one thing, language is a very, very powerful tool when it comes to dehumanizing certain groups of human beings. When we call the unborn child a parasite or a clump of cells or a blob of tissue, that's all language designed to detract from the humanity of that unborn child. And it's not the first time dehumanizing language has been used to dehumanize it.
And we do that in order to...
In order to allow ourselves, I think, to commit a grave human rights violation. When we actually look at what abortion does to a fetus or an embryo, it's a very violent death. I've seen what suction aspiration and dilation and curettage do to an unborn or a fetus, an embryo. It's not a death I would wish on any animal, much less a human being in the earliest stages of development. It's not something we are shown, it's not something we know about. We think it's a very clean and tidy procedure. Even in my nursing program, I was told that abortion removes the contents of the uterus. Well, what are the contents? The contents are the tiny human form that is developing within. We weren't shown pictures, it is a very disturbing thing to actually see visually what it does, what the procedure looks like, what it does to a small human being. So that is why the language is necessary in order for us to continue to allow this to happen. If we all knew what it looked like, what it was, what it did, we have to use language to mask what it really is, the truth of it.
So then, men and women throughout North America are wanting to hang on to keep their right to choice because?
Because, well, I'll tell you, pregnancy is not easy. It's not easy. It's not, in any circumstance, I'm sure I wouldn't say any woman would say it was a breeze, and so it's a lot easier, I think, if you say this isn't the right time for me, I'm not ready, that kind of thing. To undergo a procedure that will instantly just take this situation away, I mean, it's understandable, but I think people aren't really realizing there's a disconnect between what they think it is and what it actually is, and what it actually does.
Tell me whether I've heard you correctly. I've heard you say that, or at least I understand you to be saying, that people want to keep their right to abortion for those occasions when a pregnancy is inconvenient for them, without truly understanding the horrible outcomes of the procedure.
Right.
Is that it in a nutshell?
I would say so, and the, you know, when we talk about a woman's right to choose, you know, that is a right that's been given legally, but you know, we have to look at times when legally a white American, it was their right to choose whether or not to own a slave. Was that a human rights violation? Yes, it was. Was it legal? Yes, it was. You know, so we, you know, we have to look, just because it was easier, it was economically a really good idea, slavery, you know, was it right? No. Mm-hmm. You know, was it ethical? You know, eventually the truth had to come out. Eventually things had to change.
So you're saying that the right of people to own slaves a couple hundred years ago is equivalent to the desire for people to have the right to abort nowadays?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Unequivocally.
Now, one of my questions is, I've seen a number of people in front of the hospital protesting. They have sandwich boards and so on. And when I consider the continued number of abortions that you guys have mentioned in North America, I wonder, are you guys gaining any adherents, or are you fighting a losing battle?
Yeah, well, good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
And I'm sure there are many people in the movement who, after 40 years of fighting this battle, do get discouraged and do drop out. But for me personally, and I'm going to refer back to the issue of slavery, we're going to talk about that more later, because I know people do take offense to us comparing abortion to slavery, and I do want to flesh that out more during this interview.
Okay.
But I look back, it took 250 years to abolish the practice of slavery, generation after generation after generation, and people who fought the institution of slavery. I'm sure there were lots who took the same position as you. You know, the millions of slaves that are enslaved, and this is never going to happen. The Supreme Court has said that blacks are not persons and that slavery is okay. You know, all laws and politicians, the majority of the public was all pro-slavery or pro-choice on slavery. Sorry.
It's okay.
And so that's what I look to the movement to abolish slavery, the 250-year movement to abolish slavery, and I look at so far our 40-year movement to abolish abortion. And I know that it might take another 100 years, it might take another 200 years to abolish abortion, but that is not going to stop me from being on the right side of history.